Welcome to St. Petersburg, the home of Russian Empire, the country's most admired museum city, and the birthplace of many great artists, writers, and entrepreneurs who made the city world famous. This video starts a series of episodes that are going to introduce a viewer to an exciting world of Russian art and history, most of which was created here in St. Petersburg. Today, in a little over 10 minutes, we're going to be talking about 10 landmarks that you don't want to miss when you visit St. Petersburg, as they build a solid foundation for your understanding of this city, and why this city attracts millions of visitors every year. Number 1. The point of Vasilievsky Island, where it all began. Ever since St. Petersburg was founded, this place has played an important role in its life, as the main seaport of Russia used to be here. One of the top-tier landmarks in St. Petersburg are the world-famous rostral columns. Once lighthouses, now are only lit on special occasions. They're decorated with rostrums, prows of enemy ships defeated in battles, a tradition going all the way back to Roman times, hence the name. Stock Exchange building with its 44 columns dominates over the whole complex. Great many visitors from abroad came to St. Petersburg just to see this neoclassical ensemble. A lot of people said it was probably the most beautiful port they have ever seen in their life. On average, 2,000 ships from Germany, Denmark, France, Netherlands, Sweden would come to St. Petersburg every year. There were even ships from the United States of America. More than half of the traded goods in Russia were traded here. Today, the point of Vasilievsky Island is one of the trademark views of St. Petersburg. Originally, the whole island was intended to become the city center, and this narrowest point on its eastern side was a perfect location for a port. There was no better place for it, right where the river Neva splits in two, only a few miles from the sea entrance. Heavily protected by two strong fortresses, the Admiralty, which was also used as a shipyard, where most of the Russian Navy ships were built in Peter's time south of here, and St. Peter and Paul Fortress, which pretty much literally started the city of St. Petersburg east of here. If you happen to be here in person, the view is very rewarding. You can see the Hermitage Museum complex with a large green Winter Palace building standing by another thing St. Petersburg is famous for, one-of-a-kind granite embankments, as well as the river Neva and our second highlight, St. Peter and Paul Fortress. This fortress was the first big construction project for St. Petersburg, happening at the same time as the construction of the point of Vasilievsky Island. It was here that they built one of the most iconic buildings in St. Petersburg, St. Peter and Paul Cathedral. This cathedral is a very important building for St. Petersburg and for the whole country of Russia, as it symbolically celebrates Peter the Great's never-give-up attitude and victories over domestic foes as well as international rivals. The main entrance is decorated with exquisite Peter's Gate. The main idea that guided the architect was to glorify the achievements of the new Russian state under the rule of Peter I. There are two statues decorating the gate: Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, on the right, wearing a helmet, and Bellona, the goddess of war. The emblem of Russia, a large double-headed eagle, is in the center. You can see bas-relief precipitation of Simon Magus. The main character, Simon Magus, grew a pair of wings and flew up to heaven like an angel. St. Peter has struck him down. Political significance of this allegory is evident. Since St. Petersburg was founded during Russian-Swedish war over this land, Apostle Peter represents Peter the Great, and Simon Magus, the opponent of Peter, Protestant King Charles XII, banished from this land forever. The bas-relief gave the name to the gate. As we have just said, St. Peter and Paul Cathedral is an important building in St. Petersburg. They used Copenhagen Town Hall as a prototype. It was no surprise, as Peter's fascination with European countries is well known. It was the first ever Russian church building constructed in a European fashion as a basilica, elongated building, and up until mid-1730s, all the churches in Russia were built this way. However, at the time of construction, the church was of secondary importance. Peter had insisted that the bell tower be constructed as soon as possible, and that it's taller than Ivan the Great bell tower of the Moscow Kremlin, depicted on the right, which was 260 feet tall, and that the main state clock is installed here in St. Petersburg. That's why the bell tower is far more noticeable than the whole structure. It was an important move signifying Peter's victory over the political opposition based in Moscow. When the tower was finished, the height was 367 feet. Later, in 1958, they changed the wooden spire foundation for the one made of steel, and the tower got 30 feet taller. From Peter's time on, towers and spires in St. Petersburg start playing an important role in the city planning, as they dominated over all the buildings in the city, making squares and blocks of streets start or end there. Inside, the cathedral blinds your eye with bright colors. You can see the wall of icons, carved and gilded to commemorate victory in the war with Sweden. It reminds us of an Arch of Triumph, with its abundance of columns and richly decorated icon frames. It is another big achievement of Peter's rule. It shows us that it was during his time that Russian woodcarvers have successfully mastered the art of making structures and sculptures in European Baroque style. Most of the ruling monarchs from the House of Romanovs were buried here with their families. First one was the founder of St. Petersburg, this fortress and this cathedral, which was not yet finished at the time, Peter the Great. And after his death, the tradition of using this cathedral as a burial place continued on. The last Tsar that was buried here was Nicholas II with his wife and children. Their remains are resting here since 1998, the year that marked the 80th anniversary of their murder in 1918. In this portrait, owned by the Hermitage Museum, you can see Peter with the locations we mentioned in chapter 1 and 2 of this video. Point of Vasilievsky Island, River Neva, St. Peter and Paul Fortress, as well as many sailing ships, symbol of commerce and Russian Navy founded by Peter. Landmark number 3, the Hermitage Museum. One of the most famous museums of the world, Hermitage is believed to be the most special of them all. Impressive enormous art collection of little less than 3 million exhibits, something any world-class museum can brag about when it comes to Hermitage, is only a part of the museum. Perfectly preserved suite of reception halls of the Winter Palace could very well be a museum on their own. Throne rooms, portrait galleries, ballrooms, they just never end and leave a lasting impression on a first-time visitor. Hermitage art collection, as we have just mentioned, is one of the most impressive in the world. But not only that, it also gives us a good opportunity to better understand Russian history. All the significant Russian rulers were obsessed with an idea of catching up to European countries and to outperform them. Collecting art was no exception. All the major monarchs around had their own private art collections. Catherine II of Russia, shortly after becoming the Empress in the year 1762, had purchased 225 paintings by the world-famous Flemish, Dutch and Italian masters. This collection became the cornerstone of Catherine's Hermitage, and art pieces that formed it are still on display in the museum. Today, the Hermitage collections are arranged in 6 departments: Western European art, Oriental art, ancient art, primitive civilization, numismatics, Russian culture. The earliest exhibits date back to 500,000 BC, the latest ones to nowadays. Visitors can admire works by such famous artists as Botticelli, Leonardo da Vinci, Titian, Raphael, Michelangelo, Caravaggio, Velázquez, Goya, El Greco, Rembrandt, Van Dyck, Rubens, French Impressionists like Monet, Renoir, Matisse, Picasso, to mention just a few names. No person ever comes to St. Petersburg without visiting the Hermitage. Like most of the buildings in the city, Hermitage is surrounded by water. It stands on a river, a canal flows in between its buildings, which leads us to our next chapter, number 4, Canals of St. Petersburg. Ever since St. Petersburg was founded, Peter never wanted it to look like a regular Russian city at the time. He wanted his brainchild to look like European cities he had visited when he traveled Europe with his grand embassy. When he built his new capital, the great amount of water found around the mouth of River Neva allowed Peter to have Amsterdam or Venice, cities with a large number of canals and islands, in mind when he planned the city's streets and squares around them. And later, in the second half of 1700s, during the reign of Catherine II, they were faced with granite, making St. Petersburg embankments world famous. Today, there are over 80 rivers and canals in the city, with a total length of around 190 miles. Because of all this water, St. Petersburg is also famous for its great number of bridges, which is around 500, way more than in any other city in the world. The largest of them are drawbridges stretching across River Neva, as it's still used for navigation, and drawbridges allow freight ships from all over the world to pass through St. Petersburg. Thousands of people come to see the bridges go up at night. Number 5. Summer Gardens. This oldest public park in the city owes its name to the summer palace of Peter I, located in its grounds. Laid out already in Peter's time, a year after the foundation of St. Petersburg, summer gardens stand out for being richly decorated with original Italian marble statues of the 18th century, as well as for its fence, which is a very fine example of ironwork and is said to be one of the most beautiful in the world. Number 6. Church on the Spilled Blood. This landmark's full name is the Church of Resurrection of Christ on Spilled Blood. The style it was built in imitates traditional Russian church architecture with its onion-shaped domes and richly decorated interior with mosaics and semi-precious stones. As beautiful as the church is, just as sad as the stories behind it. It was built on the spot where on March 1, 1881, a group of radicalized young people blew up and killed the reigning Emperor Alexander II dead away. This whole church was built to celebrate his life and his rule. It was during his time that in 1861 Russia signed the abolition of serfdom, giving freedom to the majority of Russian citizens opening up entrepreneurial career opportunities for millions and millions of people across the country. Number 7. Nevsky Prospect. Nevsky Prospect is one of the oldest streets around. They started using it in the early days of St. Petersburg, and at around mid-1700s, during the reign of Empress Catherine II, it started to become the city's main street. It's famous for being the city's cultural and entertainment center. Many theaters, museums, churches of different denominations, movie theaters are located here, as well as its shopping center. Bottom floors of most buildings are occupied by different shops. There are also many banks, hotels, apartment houses here as well. Name a thing and you'll find it here. This street is also famous for millions of people walking up and down it every single day. Number 8. St. Isaac's Cathedral. What you see right now on your screen is not the first version of this cathedral. The construction of this building was finished as late as 1858. The whole St. Isaac's theme though started back already in Peter's time, and one of the first churches in St. Petersburg was a St. Isaac's church standing around here. It's a very important landmark for our understanding the significance of Peter the Great's rule. In the year 1712, he and his bride, then future Empress Catherine I, held their wedding ceremony in the original St. Isaac's Church, which was an unprecedented thing at the time because all of the events at this level were traditionally happening in Moscow, then the old and original capital of Russia. This wedding, as well as the construction of the all-time high bell tower of St. Peter and Paul Cathedral back in the fortress, had signified the beginning of new times for Russia, as St. Petersburg was getting all the attention of the emperor and eventually became Russia's capital and the home of the House of Romanov. Number 9. The Colonnade of St. Isaac's Cathedral. When you visit this cathedral, a cherry on the cake is the colonnade, which offers one of the finest views in town. Up until recently, St. Petersburg had a high-rise ban in place ever since Winter Palace was built back in the mid-1700s, and so now from here we can see for miles and miles around. It probably is the only legitimate place in the city where you can see all historic center from above. Number 10. Bronze Horseman, Russia's most favorite monument. There is no sculpture in all great Russian art that would have so many people unanimously falling in love with it as Bronze Horseman. No other monument got its name from the national genius Alexander Pushkin, who dedicated his whole poem to it. Art historians consider this monument to be the best example of world sculpture of the 18th century. The monument was unveiled during the reign of Catherine II, who at some point in her career had received her Catherine the Great title from the Russian Senate. It was done way before she had done anything significant for the country, and she perfectly understood that it was awarded to her way up front, and that from then on she had to live up to what was expected from her. When they decided to install a monument to Peter the Great, it was supposed to become the best monument of all time. When you want the best, you hire the best. So she hired great French sculptor Etienne Maurice Falconet, who had perfectly portrayed Peter just as we believe he was, a great emperor who embraced challenge all of his life. This big rock is regarded as a symbol of Peter's famous never-give-up attitude and his trademark quality of getting things done no matter what. A brief inscription on the monument's pedestal, Petro Primo Caterina Secunda, that you can now see on your screen, was supposed to put both rulers on the same level. A monument had to be as great as the city of Peter the Great. When asked to depict Peter as a Roman emperor, the sculptor refused to do it by saying, "I'm not going to dress him like a Roman, just as I would not have dressed Caesar or Scipio like a Russian." He had also convinced Catherine not to make Peter wear a traditional Russian dress, as Peter had fought against all Russia all of his life, and the city of St. Petersburg is a great symbol of Peter's victory. As a result, we see a simple but solemn dress, which is rather neutral and does not steal away from the greatness of Peter's persona. The monument is standing in the very heart of the city, right in front of the buildings that symbolize the importance of St. Petersburg for the whole empire: the building of Russian Senate, St. Isaac's Cathedral, the building of the Admiralty, and the building of Russian Synod, which at the time was the main office of Russian Orthodox Church. Thank you for watching this video. Going through these landmarks, we brought up some names that we believe are essential for understanding St. Petersburg better, and we encourage you to read about these people. In some of the next videos that we publish, we're going to be talking about them in more detail. We also are going to be talking about monuments, palaces, squares, and locations that we didn't mention in this video. To get notified about these new episodes, click subscribe and then click the bell button. That'll make sure that you're not going to miss these videos when they go live. We would also greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like to this video. See you next time. Until then, stay safe and goodbye.